this whole thing is seasonal. I won't sit in this seat forever. There's going to come another transition. And for you, there's going to come another transition. And what you take from here, you can incorporate into that next thing in your life if you're intentional about it. And so for us, like that's really what's behind it, is how can we be intentional for the individual, which is obviously going to morph into like our greater collective success.
Every week here on More Than Profit, we explore the stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors who have made a difference in the world while building successful businesses. We sit down with each guest and dive into their personal journey, their struggles and triumphs, and the lessons they've learned along the way. On this episode, we sit down with the new general manager of the Atlanta Hawks, Landry Fields. He played 5 seasons in the NBA for the New York Knicks and the Toronto Raptors from 2010 through 2015. Ever since, Field has had a rapid accession in the front office, and at the age of 34, he was only just promoted from assistant general manager to GM in June of 2022, and now he's running the show. Landry was born in Long Beach, California, was a 3-year letter winner on the varsity basketball squad, and though he was heavily recruited, Landry ultimately chose to play for Trent Johnson and Stanford. After an amazing senior year with Stanford, Fields was selected with the 39th overall pick in the 2010 NBA draft by the New York Knicks. Landry's desire to see people grow and thrive and to support their journey to success and satisfaction sets him apart as a leader in the NBA.
I remember probably the hardest transition I ever had. Man, I think it was when I was trying to get out of the Army. There was a part of me that wanted to stay in. You know, I was stationed in Korea. I loved it. My dad was in for 23 years. And come from a long history of military families.
And at this point, you've been there in it 4 years.
Yeah, I was in for 4 years. Well, I started to think about it when I was in for 3. And I had all these opportunities like, hey, do I want to go be a foreign area officer, which is like an attaché in embassies abroad? Or do I kind of get out and do something completely different? And that was probably the hardest decision because I loved being in the Army. And you've had some hard decisions as well.
My whole life is hard, Bryce, as the listeners know probably. But I would say, yeah, I've had hard transitions with changing jobs, moving states. We moved a lot with the kids and all that stuff. But with our guest today, Landry Fields, it's what Bryce and I were talking about. We briefly talked to Landry about it, but just going, all of our transitions essentially have been in private. So it's not in any way a public thing. So Bryce, give some background on who Landry is today.
Well, I mean, Landry is well known by a lot of people. He's a rock star in the basketball arena. He played professionally for 5 years on 2 different teams and was a star at Stanford before that. And now is probably one of the youngest general managers in the NBA and has been for the last couple of years in Atlanta. But man, you've had some changes in your life. But as Brian was saying, they're all in everybody's face. Like from the time you were in high school, you were a known quantity. You were a highly sought after recruit. And then you were in college and played at the top of your game and then went on. So what was that like, these kind of massive changes? Here you were a kid at 18 years old making some major choices. What was that like for you at that time?
Oh, gosh. At that time, it was a lot. And you speak about transitions. A lot of times we always tie that to moves. Like you go from one proximity to the next. And I think if you go back, like just me personally, the transition of like household dynamics, like my parents divorced when I was 6 or 7. So you're just old enough at that point to really grasp what's going on, but also at the same time, not really understanding it. So it's more like a feeling. And so you have this transition of your dad moving out. They're not necessarily modeling what's great parenting, which comes back to get you a little bit in your own parent journey at this point. But that's like the first major one. I was thinking back on this as you guys were talking about transitions and whatnot. Like that's all that was like a transition of just household dynamics. But yeah, you fast forward to Stanford, leaving home. It was still relatively close. Like it's a 4 or 5 hour drive from Long Beach, where I'm from. It was tough. Like the first 2 years you're on your own, which is great, right? You have this autonomy. You're on campus. It's great campus life there. The basketball portion, it's like you thought you were working really hard in high school. I mean, like you were going above and beyond, but then you get there and you're going up against guys and you're like, I got a lot more work to do. And you're balancing that with the academic rigors that were there. And it was tough, like my first 2 years.
Were you 6'7" by the time you entered college?
No. So I was probably a shade under 6'5" when I graduated high school. By the time I left Stanford, I grew 2 inches. I was a late bloomer. Like puberty, it felt like I was going late. Like my prom pictures, I looked like I was 12. So going to Stanford is like when I really had like the acne stage, and it was just like brutal. Like add that to the transition period.
How did you choose Stanford? Like I'm always fascinated by this because you were heavily recruited by several other schools. Brian was going to share one of them.
University of Arizona, really. Lute Olson wanted you.
Yeah.
Again, I hate to say it, but I called it, I went there, Harvard of the West. That's other people's words, not mine. But I mean, you ended up on Stanford how? Because Gonzaga wanted you.
Yeah, like how do you make that decision? What factored into your calculus as you're going through that?
So yeah, I was recruited by a lot of different schools. So there was New Mexico was recruiting me really hard. And the head coach at the time, his name's Richie McKay. I got on campus. It was my first official visit. My parents were like, yeah, go there, get the experience of what an official visit is like. And he offers me not just a scholarship, but a starting spot. Like he's like, if you come here next year, you're going to start. And I had a great time. I loved it. The campus life was cool. The team was good. And I came home and I told my dad, Dad, I'm going to go to New Mexico. He gave me that look like only a father could give you. He's like, no, you're not. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is my decision. He's like, nope, you're going to go to Stanford. And
wow.
At that time too, yeah, Arizona was in the mix. And Lute Olson, Hall of Fame coach, it was awesome to just be recruited by him. I went to Stanford. I worked really hard to get into Stanford. Apart from like you take the grades, but the SAT was not just the easiest thing for me. I took it 3 separate times. I had to continuously boost my score up and up and up because Stanford, they weren't going to offer me a scholarship until they knew I could actually get into school and handle the academics there. And Stanford is Stanford, and I don't know it comparable to other schools, but I mean, it was tough. But yeah, calling Lute Olson and telling him, hey, Hall of Fame coach Lute Olson, I'm not coming to play for your program, although you put a lot of guys in the NBA, and that's where I want to get to. But I worked really hard to get into Stanford. They finally offered me, so I'm going to go to Stanford. And looking back, obviously hindsight, I loved it. Great decision.
Well, and a great school. I mean, Stanford is, for the West, it's one of the best academic schools out there. And then the network you have going to Stanford is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing. You're brushing shoulders with a lot of unique people. And I'm sure you could do that at a lot of different schools, no doubt.
Well, U of A for sure. But anyways, yeah.
I got a lot of buddies that went to U of A. I mean, it was close. It would have been a fun time.
Well, but I just think there's also something interesting because it's like, obviously you're getting recruited and your focus is on basketball, but you not only got to play basketball at the top level, but you also went to a top tier university. So now, as you've shifted later in life to kind of the front office, the business side of basketball, so to speak, you've got an unbelievable network and an unbelievable education that I don't even know if that factored when you were making that decision. If you were just still like in this basketball phase of like, I'm just doing everything I can to get into the pros or what?
No, it factored in. That was a huge reason why. It's like, okay, I want to be in the NBA. I know it's extremely hard to be in the NBA. If I don't get to the NBA, a Stanford degree is not bad to fall back on. And the people that you meet and the network that you guys are talking about, yeah, it's all real. It's all there. That was the general thinking of what I wanted to do. And so being able to do both is great.
So did you live with your dad or your mom when you were in high school?
We had this weird back and forth. It was like you go over to my mom's house on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, dad's Wednesday, Thursday, mom Friday, Saturday, and then switch it the next week. So it was a 50-50. I don't know why we did it that way, but that's the way the court decided.
Was it chaotic for you to kind of do that back and forth all the time?
It wasn't terrible. My dad, God bless him, he decided to move only like 0.4 miles away from when they first divorced. So it was an easy walk. He did it strategically because he knew if he moved too far, he might not be able to see my sister and I. And then he moved like 3 separate times, all within like a 1 mile radius. And my dad's still in the same condo that I was in high school. He just refuses to move. He's talking about these California prices. I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like,
come on out to Atlanta.
Like, let's get you somewhere else. Like, it's time.
And then you didn't start till your senior year at Stanford, correct?
My junior year.
Okay, so junior year you started playing because obviously you were the all-star in high school. You get to Stanford. I mean, you're played in most of the games. I mean, even your freshman year, correct?
It was not a ton of minutes. There were not many opportunities. The first 2 years, and then we had a coaching change. Coach left, went somewhere else. We got a new coach. Had some players leave, so that kind of gave me an opportunity to step in.
So then again, it's like you said, your chances of getting in and playing a D1 school small, and then going pros even smaller. So you make it to the pros. So you get out of Stanford, you get recruited. And so initially with the Knicks, that's who you went to.
Yep. Yeah, I was drafted by the Knicks.
Then again, that transition of going, it had to be obviously hard at Stanford, but then even harder in the pros.
It was sort of a different story with that. First of all, like looking back, chances of making a pro sports team, I was looking at some of the statistics on it. It's like astronomical. And that's not to say like, hey, I'm awesome. It's just like, wow, like you really have to do some things right. And a lot of things that have to go right that aren't a part of what you're doing. But then when I got drafted by the Knicks, it was a second round pick, which in the NBA at that point in time, it's like you have a chance, but you're not guaranteed a contract. So I went to summer league, had a pretty good summer league, and they offered me a contract after that. And then go through the summer and into training camp through preseason. By the time our first game came around, Mike D'Antoni was the coach. He called me into his office and he made a joke. He's like, usually when I call guys in this point, it's to cut them, but I'm here to tell you almost the opposite. You're going to start your first game
Wow.
with us. Yeah.
Wow.
So as a rookie, a second round pick rookie, like that was, I didn't know at the time, but it was something that doesn't happen very often, and proceeded to have like a really good rookie campaign. It was very different from my freshman year at Stanford versus my rookie year in the NBA.
Yeah.
Did any of that have to do with the fact that you were like singularly focused on basketball at that point? You know, before at Stanford D1 school, like you're having to manage lots of different things, right? Friendships, autonomy, that's one thing. And then also school is another, and then also the sports. Like, did that have a factor for you as you were kind of thinking about the pros?
It helps. It does. When you're able to graduate from school, you kind of put that to the side, and then now you're all in on basketball and getting better. The jump I made from the time my season ended my senior year at Stanford to the time I got to New York that following training camp, like huge jumps. It took big jumps when I was at Stanford, but just went to another level at that point. And that seriously helped. And also the makeup of the team, it was a nice opportunity for me with my skill set and what the team needed at that point, which was like, I guess you can call it a 3-and-D archetype, where it's a guy that can space the floor and somebody that can play defense.
So hardest player you ever played that rookie year, who was the hardest person you went up against in the NBA?
Some of the greats, like LeBron, was tough. I was just thrilled to share the same court as Kobe. I grew up idolizing him. It's not surprising to people in NBA circles, but whenever I mention his name to people outside NBA circles, they're kind of like, oh, okay. Like Joe Johnson was one of the most challenging guys I've ever had to guard. Like being as big as he was, as shifty as he was, and just picked you apart on everything. He was tough for me. He was tough.
As you go into the pros, and obviously now your career's continued in the NBA, what are some of the things that you've learned along the way? Like, you know, one of my heroes is Colin Powell, and he wrote a book, My American Life, but also he has these like 13 principles. And when he was in the Army, he would actually print them out. My dad actually worked for him in Germany back in the late 80s, and he'd print them out and put them on his desk. And these were like his life principles. They're pretty good. I'm just curious, like as you kind of have matured both D1 school, now pros, and now what you're doing today, what are some of your principles for living that you're like, you know, you've learned or you've kind of picked up along the way that have been helpful for you?
I think a big factor just going through high school, and it's actually on topic of transitions, is just the cyclical nature of them and the seasonal nature that they all go through, and not getting too caught up in whatever stage it is that you're in. And the way kind of I look at it is always in 4 different stages, I guess you could say, where the first stage is, and this is sort of my Stanford experience. I get recruited, I get offered a scholarship. I'm floating on cloud 9. I'm super excited. The world is my oyster. I can do anything I want. Like I had visions of being on the front of Sports Illustrated with a couple other rookies, just on the NBA, Brooke and Robin Lopez. I was going to be in a Stanford jersey, and they were going to be in these CIA suits, and it was like on the front cover, and they were like, it's freshmen at Stanford take college basketball by storm. Like I literally pictured that in my head. Like it's something that I should just make up now. And there's an excitement to it, but it's sort of like this blind confidence you have. And then you get on campus, and then you hit stage 2, and you realize that reality is not what's going on in your head. It's what actually reality is. And so you hit that second stage where now all of a sudden you're in this unconscious competence now where, oh my gosh, like these guys are freaking good, and I've got a lot of work to do. And a lot of people get lost in that. This is my experience, especially as I'm looking at young players now. They hit that stage, and the NBA is not quite what they thought it might be. And I like to extrapolate that. It's like, like that seems to be a lot of different things, whether you're getting married or having kids, you kind of have those 2 first cycles in it. And so I have to help coach them, because it's just the principles that I've been through in my own life, where you're going to have those moments. There's excitement about something new. There's the reality of what it truly is. Then you have to really get to work and kind of climb yourself out of this pit stage. And then you kind of get your footing and you kind of get mature through it. And that's stage 3 and 4. So that principle of just maintaining a posture of growth and maintaining a posture that this is going to be just a season that you're in is probably would be big on my list. I don't have a Colin Powell list, but if I write a book one day, that might be chapter 1.
I like it.
No, and I do think, though, what's interesting is because you think about you're under the scrutiny of fans your whole career, like everything you've done, whether it's high school to college to pro, and even now as a GM, you have 400 people telling you what you're doing wrong or how you could be doing better. And even last night, like watching the Suns games where I just thought they were interviewing some of the fans and I just thought, here we are, we win. And then the negative things that they say about the players saying, if they don't pick this up, they're going to, and I just thought there's no rest for you. Like there's no respite of going. Every phase that you just listed, most of us go through, but nobody watches us. Nobody's critiquing us. And I just go, so does that affect you or are you not affected by if you got on a Twitter and people are just tearing you apart?
Yeah, not so much anymore. And it's a good point. Twitter could destroy guys. It really can. I first experienced that at Stanford because that's when Twitter kind of like started getting going. And in New York, though, that fan base, as much as I have an unbelievable amount of love for them, they were brutal at times. But if you're doing great, you're floating on cloud 9. But if you're not doing well, like they're going to let you know about that. And if for a young 20, at that point I'm 22.
I mean, 22 years old, you were just a small child.
Yeah, I mean the brain's fully formed at that point. You're reading all this stuff, and I can't help but read it. I'm like, I want to see what people say about me. Like, what are people saying? And you start reading something, and it could be 100 great things. And you've heard this story time and time again. And there's that 1 or 2 comments that are so brutal. You're just looking at it like, damn, like that's rough. Like that really came through a person's thought process and out, so I could see that. And through that, I really went through, especially my second year in New York, a real trying stage. People are like, yeah, woe was me. But it really is. Like, I didn't want to go out of my condo. I didn't want to see anybody on the streets of New York. The team was not doing so hot at a certain point until Linsanity. And then you're just kind of in this whole sheltered mode of, I don't want to see people. Because as you're saying, yeah, you're sort of living your performance out for everyone to see. And in some way, shape, or form, like it's tied to that because we're all fans of others and we want to see them do well. We have a lot of pride for the teams that we root for. And so we feel sort of this general connection with those players. And then you add in how much guys make, and it's hard to disassociate those two things for a lot of people. And it can get a little messy. People are going to say some things because their own fanhood or their own pride is at stake to others around them. And they want to, whatever it is, like they got to bolster that up. So you get to live a little bit in a glass house and people are watching what you're doing. And over time, that can really wear on you. And you have moments where you're living your private life and you're so triggered and hijacked by what's going on outside that you end up not being able to compose yourself to your family or to your friends. They're like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, this person on Twitter said so-and-so. It's like, well, dude, get over it. I'm like, I know it's super easy to say that, but when you're sort of living in a performance-based industry where you constantly want to hit the mark, it's really hard. It's really hard mentally. Like, it doesn't matter what you're making. It doesn't matter how many people around you. That whole level of consciousness that you have to work through is challenging. It really is.
You join the NBA, you're in there 5 years. Were you always thinking of the end? I mean, or do you think you're going to go on forever? How do players process that? Because I look at it and go, 5 years is an amazing time in the NBA, but was there always that concern of at any time you could be let go, or how do you deal with that?
I thought I was going to play like 15 years.
Yeah.
That was my mind, especially after the rookie season I had. I'm like, oh, I'm set up to really be in this for a long time. Bryce, what you were saying earlier, you kind of have all your eggs in one basket because how could you? How could you not? You're trying to be a professional athlete, the pinnacle of a number of people that are playing basketball across the country, and you've got to be the best. So like, you kind of have to be all in. And so your whole way of being, your whole identity gets tied into that. And it's just kind of what you do. It's who you are. As much as people want to say, I'm not what I do. Like in that particular moment, that's what I was. Like that's everything that was about me. And I thought I'd play 15 years. And then I ended up signing with Toronto. And the first day of training camp, I had this weird thing go on with my arm that to this day, it still does what it does. It has like this curling action. And so as a player who is known to be a shooter on your right hand, dominant hand, if you have this curl that's happening as you're going up for a shot, probably not going to be a pretty good shooter anymore.
What caused that?
I don't know. To this day, I don't know. I don't know the cause. My mom thinks it was this fall that I took in New York. She always references it. Yeah, she's like, it was that player that gave you a cheap shot and you fell. And
like, we should hunt him down for sure.
I know, seriously.
In October of 2015, Jonathan Kumar stood on the street corner in downtown Seattle. He watched a man beg for 20 minutes as not a single car opened a window for him. The man, Edward, stood there painfully seeking diabetes medication for his feet after recently ending up on the street. As person after person passed the man by, Jonathan eventually approached him and had a conversation with him. It was then that Jonathan realized this man was experiencing not just financial poverty, but a profound sense of relational poverty. Many urban citygoers continually confront homelessness, but are caught without time, cash, or the wherewithal on if cash will even help at all. These and other barriers lead to the easiest response: do nothing. And so individuals without a home are told hundreds of times an hour that they don't exist. So Jonathan built Samaritan, a support platform that empowers people without a home to move forward. Individuals gain the social and financial support needed to rebuild hope and reach housing goals. Become a Samaritan today. Be a part of encouraging your unhoused neighbors and funding strategic needs to help them reach life-changing outcomes. To learn more and to become a Samaritan, visit Samaritan.city and also check out episode 46 of this podcast to hear my interview with Jonathan about his journey and the amazing work they are doing at Samaritan. Now back to the episode.
Right now, some would say you're at the top of your game. You're a GM, 34 years old, killing it. And it would seem like those transition points are rather seamless and almost manufactured in a way that like, oh, it was no, like I'm going to play and then I'm going to go do this. But can you talk to us, like when you left, obviously you thought I'm just going to play for 15 years and you played for 5. Did you know that you were going to stay in the NBA and switch to the front office? Or like, what was that transition like? Was that a hard landing for you in a sense, like emotionally and just kind of as you were processing through, okay, what am I going to do next? Like this has been who I've been for the last 10 years plus.
Yeah, it was extremely difficult. There was a point where I hated basketball. I was in my second year in Toronto and I couldn't figure out my injury. I had been brought in like on a really nice contract to be a staple wing, you could say, for that team. And, you know, you're equating production with X number of dollars that you make. And for me, like I wanted the general manager, I wanted the team, I wanted the fans to know like I'm worth every penny that you spent for me. And you're going through this weird injury that nobody can explain. I couldn't even explain it to myself. So you start to get those looks about like, are you faking an injury? Is this all in your head? All that stuff, like all that Twitter stuff now became like right around me. It was Twitter and it was that. I had learned at that point to really shut down Twitter because it's crushing me. So I got through that teaching. But it was really the beginning of the end. You just didn't know it at that time. I thought it was another injury. I'd get through it. I remember second year, I'm like, I hate basketball. I want nothing to do with this. If this is the end, I want nothing to do with this when it's all said and done. And I had one more year to go. And I really tried hard. I tried a couple surgeries to try to fix it and nothing fixed it. And I went into that last year and I think I knew, like, I'm like, this is probably my last year. The mix between I can't break through this ceiling of what I need to do from a basketball skill standpoint, and I'm mentally fried. And not only that, but I had this all this other off-court stuff where I'm trying to make this whole relationship work with my wife at the time. And like that was something that, you know, you're trying to navigate a newness of that with this downfall of a career. You know, I'm in Toronto, which is, I'd never been there apart from when I played there. And I didn't have great community at that point either. And I just really didn't want a lot of community either, which would have been extremely helpful in a situation like that. But you feel like you're kind of dying this identity crisis of, I don't even know what's next, even if it's not basketball, because I've only done basketball since I was 4 or 5 years old, where I really was focused on basketball. And I'm sitting there on the bench, right? So I have nothing but to do except scout. I'm scouting all the players. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get into scouting because I'm just sitting here and I'm watching these guys. And that sort of triggered, that was a little spark of what came afterwards. But it was tough, man. It's hard to reinvent yourself after being at what you believe is to be the pinnacle of that particular space.
What was your degree in from Stanford? What did you study there?
So I studied communication, and Stanford people would tell you it's not communications, it's communication. And there's a difference. It had nothing to do with public speaking or, one-on-one interactions, communication. A lot of it had to do with psychology behind your interaction, human interaction. At that point at Stanford was with technology. So the interfaces of your phone. I mean, we're looking at this right now. Do I look right here in the camera? But then I can't see myself. I'm not looking at you guys in the eye. I'm looking at the camera. What's the psychology behind that? Those are all components of it, which to me was very interesting. Although at the time, I'm not going to leverage that into something of a career. But like looking back, there was some psychology components of it that I gravitate towards now. If I were to go back, I actually probably would study psychology. That would be it if I could reinvent it.
Well, Landry, you have a unbelievable presence. We've known each other off and on for a couple of years now, but even now on this call, you have an energy about you. You have a confidence about you. But I'm hearing you there are points where I hated basketball. I didn't want to do it anymore. Where does that confidence come from? Were there people in your life that helped shape that? Where do you go to in order to kind of call that forward? Because even now as a GM, you have that opportunity to kind of inspire and to coach and to help younger guys now in the league. Where does that come from for you?
Gosh, there's a lot of people. I mean, I have my faith background, which definitely plays a huge factor into it, which has a story of its own. It's not always what people think. That's a journey in and of itself that has some really dark days, I think, if we're being honest, which I don't bring to a lot of stories now with people, but there are components of it, like going through that, which helps shape me in the way I am today. But just the people around that space as well. And people that were able to pour into me at a particular time in my life when I was at my low point. He had a tough time with, his own stories and where he's at on his own journey. But Carl Lentz was an unbelievable mentor for me. I owe that dude a lot at a time where I was really vulnerable and I didn't like myself. I didn't like life. He really poured into me. I'd be remiss never to not bring him up. And not just him, but my wife has been unbelievable. I've had mentors along the way, people that I don't think really knew how helpful they were. Obviously, before this call, I was at this space before transition from playing to front office work where I was hanging with you guys a little bit, and that was fun. That was pivotal for me. And you take little nuggets along the way. And I think what morphed in me was, and I don't know if I consciously thought of this, but it was I have so much that I feel like I've gained. And I found myself getting really excited to tell people about hey, I've experienced that too. This might be able to help you. And then there was a point where I thought I was going to be a pastor. And my wife was like, no.
That's a good call.
I'm not doing that life. And looking back, I was like, I love my wife. Thank you. There's no knock. It's just I couldn't do it.
Well, and the influence you're able to have, in the role that you're playing. I think that's ultimately, hopefully, what your wife was seeing there too.
I think that's what it was. I really do. Because even in that last year in Toronto, I really gravitated towards just things that I was learning that I really wanted to share. And you have to learn discretion with that type of stuff because you get really excited about things and just give that advice to somebody that's not really soliciting it. And you're like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But in this space right now, yeah, you look at it and being a general manager, it means you got to hire a coach, you got to trade players, you got to put together a team and win a championship. It's yeah, that's part of it. But I've learned that the deeper vision and deeper mission that I have is really about creating a space where people can win and grow. If I were to take everything that I think I do and what I want to do and boil it down to one sentence, it's that. And it looks like a number of different things for a number of different people in a different context. And there's sometimes where I'm pretty honest. I'm like, I can't help you right now, but I know somebody that can. And we say it a lot here, and you've heard this, a lot of people have. You're trying to draw out the best version of people. What does that really mean? And so you're taking a ton of different facets from your experience, from things that you read, things that you're understanding about people's journeys. And then I guess giving them some stuff along the way to help them out on their own journeys, because we all have it and we all need those guides. And I think that that's where, because of the help that I was given, I'd like to give it, but I also know I'm still my own journey. I have my third kid coming, so that's going to be a whole cycle in and of itself.
Start a whole nother journey there.
Oh, yeah.
And what would you say, as far as now having played and then being the GM, what's a harder job? Is the front office stuff harder? Is playing harder? What's harder?
Ooh, they're different. It's hard to say what's harder. It's going to depend from person to person. When you're a player, you're really in it. And I don't think guys really understand how much you're in it until you finally get out and you have this space to breathe. And you look back and in hindsight, wow, that was hard. Like, I look at guys do stuff that's seamless right now. And I'm like, oh man, I can't believe that at one point in time, I was able to get the kind of sleep that those guys get, the kind of travel, then wake up and do it on a back-to-back with fans doing things. And with like some guys, they don't have the greatest support systems around them. Like, it's unbelievable what these guys are able to accomplish. And then you get to the front office side and it's a whole different dynamic of scheduling. It's different on your family. It's not even like this with the players. Just, it's not a lot of balance with everything. It kind of comes and goes. And sometimes it's a left turn and it's a right. And there's these cycles that happen in and of itself. And I think it gets hard when you know that you have, like for me, it's like having my family. They have to be in a supportive role because it's really hard for my wife to do things that are just her own because of how much demand my job takes. And for me, that's challenging because you're trying to find the proper balance and harmony of that. And you know that she has sacrificed a ton to allow me to be in this position, but also I try to weave it to be inclusive and try to help her out. But that's all been, gosh, this is year 7 of my front office, like years in the making of trying to make that harmonize.
And do you ever see yourself coaching? Would you ever want to coach?
No, not in the basketball sense. No, I would. I like to pretend that I'm coaching our front office members on.
No, and you, in a sense, you are. No, you totally are.
You are. Well, and it's neat because I recently saw the documentary, the 38 at the Garden, the Linsanity one. Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I haven't.
It's well done. But he calls you out. And what I was going to bring up is like, calls you out and he's like, you know, when he was playing and he didn't make a ton of money, I think he slept on your couch at one point in your condo or something like that.
Yeah.
But I thought what I wanted to bring out was like, you know, it was a small little line in the show, but you showed up for a friend and you showed up for a teammate. You were willing to kind of help a guy out. But I've seen that time and again and kind of how you think about running the front office or working with the players or listening and creating space for them to feel, to grow and to thrive. Like that's a pretty unique quality. And I think as you're obviously new into being a GM, how does that translate into what you're focused on for the next 5 years? Like when you think about Landry Fields doing what you're doing, like apart from the basketball, what do you hope the culture is like as you grow that front office?
I really think it's the heart of it, of what you touched on about every day we all show up to work and we're still human. And a lot of times in professional sports, there seems to be this distinction between the basketball player and the human aspect. Really trying to humanize the place is, if I look back in 5 years and if I were to go, like, what's the first thing I would go to see, like, how well did we do? It would be, did I bring humanity to the place in a way that was honoring to people's journeys and in a way that was honoring to our goals and objectives, because we still have them. There's a lot of potholes along the way. And so if I can get this to a place where it's supportive, but it's also challenging, it's a place where people discover a lot more of their why. They discover their own vision and how that fits into the context of the bigger vision of what we're doing. That would be great, because I think it's really empowering. I think it's really empowering for, if people leave Atlanta, they should know that their time spent here was one of growth, but also like it really, they can look back and look at the trajectory of that they're on and go like, that was a pivotal point for me. I try to bring a lot to the group and just sit and talk about things sometimes that have nothing to do with basketball, because when you're dealing with the human aspect of it, it has everything to do with basketball. Like there's not an on-off switch. And I think we like to pretend that it's like that sometimes, even to ourselves. That would be unbelievable. And I think that if that was something that could have an outer, like an outpour to the greater Atlanta community, that would be even better. But we still got a lot of work to do.
I love what you're saying about like everybody's individual journey. We do this in business a lot, and basketball is still a business, but it's like, it becomes, what's the corporate vision, mission, and direction? But I love to hear you talk about how you care about the individual person, where they are and where they're going, and how can I help them, humanizing the office in a way. The other piece that I love too is that it's still challenging. Like what I've heard you say is like, you were able to do what you did because it was like the top of the top. I mean, you were playing in the pros. And what we don't want to do is we can't soften that. Like we need to create a culture and an atmosphere where people are rising to the occasion. And I think obviously we see that front and center in the news and such on television in sports. But I think in business too, sometimes we don't create that mountaintop opportunity for people to rise to the occasion.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine hiring a trainer and going to the gym and just sitting there
That's a good
and never doing it. There's got to be some point where like we got to go to work. Like we have things that we want to accomplish. And there's a radical minimum standard of this place, which absolutely incorporates everything about who you are and what it is that we're fighting for at the end of the day. And we want to be supportive of that. But we also like when there's a time for me to sit across from somebody and say, hey, you need to be better. They know that we've built up enough relational capital for me to sit there and know like it's coming from a place of it's not just best for us, but it's best for you. Because again, to have a callback to earlier in this conversation, this whole thing is seasonal. Like I won't sit in this seat forever. Like there's going to come another transition. And for you, there's going to come another transition. And what you take from here, you can incorporate into that next thing in your life if you're intentional about it. And so for us, like that's really what's behind it is how can we be intentional for the individual, which is obviously going to morph into like our greater collective success.
Well, Landry, because we're going to wrap things up here, but I did want to know what's your prediction? So who's going to win it all? I mean, I'm saying the Suns, but again, I'm biased because I live in Phoenix. Do you have a prediction?
I always like to say like, because we lost to Boston, I want them to win it. So we know that we lost to the best.
There you go.
Okay. That's fair enough.
That's a good answer.
Well, the other thing I just wanted to encourage you with is going, I don't know how long I've known you a little while now. I mean, I don't know how many years, since 2015. What I love about you, Landry, is you're the same person then as you are now. And it's that whole thing of going, there is a level of humility that you have and in a humanness that you want to share with other people that I go, dude, God bless you for that. And what I loved about the Linsanity thing is I didn't even know where it was all going to go. But at one point when he's talking about you, he just said, you were the only one he felt safe to call and say, hey, I need a place to stay. For you, it's just like, yeah, dude, you need a place to stay. Now, albeit you're making all that money and you've got a very short couch is what it sounded like. I don't want to say mean things, but it did sound like you slept horrible. But
I had not yet married an interior designer, so like that wasn't my strong suit.
But what I love, Landry, is you've never lost that. You really are about people and you'll always be about people. And I just go, I think the legacy you can leave on any team is going to be just that of going, you're going to see far beyond what the team has to offer and look at people, which I think is going to push things even further.
Thanks for listening to this episode of More Than Profit. Make sure to follow along because something special is happening in Atlanta. And if you are on Twitter, you can find him at Landry Fields. But let's make sure we send some encouragement instead of complaints. And what Landry is building to humanize the NBA is worthy of praise. To stay up to date with More Than Profit, make sure to subscribe wherever you get all your podcasts. And while you're there, drop us a review so others can find us as well. And don't forget to check out our new show's website at morethanprofit.fm, where we have more added content, past episodes, and we'll be posting some exciting new information about upcoming live events to connect. You can also learn more about what's ahead by following us on Twitter at listen_MTP. More Than Profit is a production of Access Ventures and is hosted by Bryce Butler and Brian McKay. Our executive producer is Crystal Escobar, and our associate producer is Bryn McKay. Audio production assistance is provided by Resonate Recording. Our theme song today was No Man's Land by Slapstorm. I'm Bryn McKay, and you've been listening to More Than Profit.